Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. You know, sometimes it's hard to say goodbye to the things we love. Things that hold a special place in your heart after knowing them for so long. Fortunately, I don't have to do that today, because this is the final Tandy Computer Whiz Kids comic, and I'm celebrating that! Yes, it's been quite a ride. Fit to Win, the computer masters of Metropolis, the computers that saved Metropolis, the answer to a riddle, a deadly choice, the computer that said no to drugs, the computer trap, victory by computer, news by computer foils kidnappers, and safeguarding the environment. My favorite was the one that had computers in it. It has led us all to this, the final Tandy Computer Whiz Kids comic. Chronologically, the final one published was the one I covered last year, Safeguarding the Environment, but I never really did these in any kind of order before. Hell, Fit to Win is arguably the worst one of the bunch, and I covered that first. But why did I save this one for last? Well, because it's so big! Yeah, I always looked at this one and thought, wow, this one must be extra long! There are like 60 plus pages in here! This could be the longest Tandy Computer Whiz Kids comic I've ever covered! Yeah, no, actually. Only about 26 pages of the comic are the Whiz Kids part. The rest is made up of games like word searches and crossword puzzles, and a reprint of Archie and the History of Electronics. And let's face it, I don't need a history of electronics or computers or anything. Every time I try to think of it, all I see is Mr. Computer slowly approaching so he can eat my soul. So yeah, gonna skip that today and focus on the characters we're here for. Those children of the damned named Alec and Shanna. Like A Deadly Choice and Safeguarding the Environment, this one's written by Mike Pawlowski, meaning that we're still free of the time loop concerning the kids and the black hole of forever that was their summer vacation. Given the staggered release of a lot of these comics, only coming every few years, that does make me wonder if the writer for those ones just plain forgot that he had them talk about their summer vacation already, or if he just liked to reuse the same script because this is a promotional PSA comic and not, you know, something worth their time to write an original story for. And on that note, let's dig into the Tandy Computer Whiz Kids, the Community Action Program, and welcome, my friends, to PSA Hell.
The PC-compatible Tandy 1000, just $9.99, with a Christmas bonus color monitor. Save $300.
The cover is very busy, showing off a group of panels, maybe meant to be photographs, depicting kids interacting with old people. Apparently, the Community Action Program involves taking an unpaid internship with Meals on Wheels, helping the elderly with their math homework, and then forcing yourself to engage with them no matter what activity they request. Pushing them around, walking their dog, feeding birds for them, or letting them win at checkers. So the Community Action Program was started by the AARP? And I'm assuming you can all figure out what all this has to do with Archie and the History of Electronics, or the Shuttle Endeavor's rescue of a runaway satellite. It was running away because it didn't want to play checkers. We open with Alec and Shanna walking through the street. Gee, this used to be such a beautiful part of town, until graffiti started showing up on everything. Well, I guess we know now where the two kids fall in the age-old question of graffiti, fun or dumb. I know, Shanna. I guess people don't realize graffiti is a type of pollution. Yeah, you say that while walking past piles and piles of litter all around you. Like, seriously, regardless of how you feel about graffiti, some artwork on a wall is the least of the problems shown on this street. Some people claim graffiti is an art form, but I think it's an ugly eyesore, and my opinion matters more than theirs. I agree. There are better ways for people to express their artistic talents than by creating graffiti. Maybe if they did their painting on a Tandy 1000, they'd get real respect as artists. The two are heading to their friend Zeke Braxton to drop off some books for him since he's been missing a lot of school. They found some art he's done in the books, obviously drawn on separate paper of course, lest we think he was graffitiing his books or anything. Anyway, they spot a guy mugging an old woman and decide to intervene. Hey, take your hands off her, you creep! Huh? This isn't worth the trouble. I'm getting out of here. 2 10-year-olds, I gotta get out of here! I joke, but considering these two do have a record of stopping crime, it's entirely possible he just recognizes the threat they pose. Also, gotta love him announcing that he's going to leave. They recognize the old lady as Mrs. Riley, a former art teacher from their school. No doubt forced into retirement during Miss Wilson's takeover of the place. They walk her home and she comments on how the neighborhood has changed so much since she first moved there. Now there are 40-year-old men loitering on stoops. She mentions how it's a bit lonely for a retired person, despite being on the executive board of the senior center, and invites the kids in for some milk and cookies. I hope you like chocolate chip cookies. It's all I have. It's not easy for me to do marketing anymore. I used to be able to get free samplers of every kind of cookie when I was promoting them, but not anymore. I did look this up, and indeed, marketing does have a definition of buying or selling things in a market, but it's just such a weird word to use for this instead of grocery shopping or the like. Anyway, the three discuss the many difficulties her and other seniors have. Not just loneliness, but broken down furniture that needs repairs, no one to help with the groceries, lack of money for food, that sort of thing. The two tell her about how the school has just instituted a community service requirement, and they'll use it to help her out. Mrs. Riley also spots Zeke's artwork. Goodness, these drawings show a lot of promise. This kid's got a real future ahead of him in lewd artwork. A few minutes later, they meet up with Zeke in a playground, hanging out with some other kids who are all holding spray paint cans. Hi Zeke, you're just the person we were looking for, but we thought you were sick. I was sick. Sick of school? Hey, we finally found a realistic kid in these comics. I guess Alec and Shanna couldn't process the idea of a kid who doesn't want to be in school, so they just ignore it and give him his homework. Thanks, but I won't have time to do it. My friends have an art project they need help with. We're gonna break a bunch of Tandy 1000s and turn them into a sculpture. You monster! He and the other kids walk off, and our two dopes just think that he was acting strange and didn't pick up on all the clearly obvious signs that he and his friends are taggers. Later, we see Alec and Shanna at home contemplating what happened with Mrs. Riley. What's more, Shanna wants to film Alec thinking about it on her Tandy camcorder. Anyway, Alec suggests they get the school involved with helping the neighborhood, cleaning up the graffiti and doing odd jobs for the seniors. The next day at school, Miss Wilson is all on board with it. I don't need convincing, Alec. I think assisting senior citizens would be an outstanding community service project. And let's face it, it's not like we do any real classwork around here, and Detective Shaw said he can't come around anymore because he's used up his department's entire drug education budget on our single class. The kids all start volunteering for specific tasks, but Miss Wilson specifically appoints Zeke, who's actually in class surprisingly enough, to help Alec and Shanna with coordinating everything. After school, they mention how Mrs. Riley liked his art, but he says he doesn't care. Apparently in the intermediate time, our heroes have put 2 and 2 together and realized he was part of the graffiti crew. Don't call graffiti art, Shanna. It's one of the worst kinds of pollution! Oh, yeah, spraying a scribbly signature on a building is just as bad as toxic waste and pesticide runoff. No way, Alec. Graffiti is art for the masses. It's the way the neighborhood express their feelings and demonstrate their talent. And their feelings and talent created a red cartoony silhouette. Dude, have a dragon fighting Optimus Prime or something. Come on. I'll have you know those drawings were made by a famous graffiti crew, and pretty soon their work may be signed TCBZ. Ah, yes. Total communist belies Zoloft. It loses something in the translation from graffiti to English. No matter what you say, Zeke, the truth is, graffiti is ugly. Glad to see you're keeping an open mind, Alec. They bring Zeke to Mrs. Riley. While Alec goes to work on the chair, she shows Zeke her artwork. Wow, your work is totally radical! Yes, nothing is more radical than A Bob Ross painting of an old schoolhouse, 2 flower still lifes, and a clown.
Dude, there's nothing more bodacious than flowers, man! I mean, have you ever smelled some flowers? Well, now you can look at a picture of them, too!
She mentions wanting to work on a huge mural someday, and Zeke expresses the same sentiment. They talk about the idea of having the kids work with the seniors, and she says she'll talk to the executive board of the senior center to try to arrange it. And we cut to the meeting of the seniors, and they're all in favor. One guy, Mr. Dobbs, has an idea for it.
I suggest we seniors swap our talents, experience, and knowledge in exchange for these services. Okay, here's my knowledge and experience, kids. 1. Stairs will forever be the enemies of your hips. 2. If you can't afford college, clearly it's because you're not working hard enough and no other reasons whatsoever. 3. Low-fat imitation pudding is just as good as the real thing.
Actually, they have more practical things they can do, like how he's a retired accountant who can teach math. Actually, I really need to learn how to do my taxes in the future. Schools don't really prepare you for—
You shut up and learn the quadratic equation, dagnabbit!
And so it's agreed, and there's cheering all around. Mrs. Riley wonders who'll keep track of everything. Don't worry, Mrs. Riley. Thanks to my Tandy home computer, that'll be a cinch. Spreadsheets, the best reason to spend hundreds of dollars on a computer. And indeed, it's all done, and soon the kids are aiding the elderly and vice versa. I stopped at the art store and got the supplies you needed, Mrs. Riley. Thank you, Zeke. I have a new painting technique to show you today. Buckle your seatbelt, Zeke. We're gonna make us some happy little clouds. Very quickly, the program is a huge success, and Miss Wilson asks what the next step is. Though I wonder why it requires a next step. This seems to be working just fine as is. This weekend, we're having a meeting at the senior center to discuss ways to beautify the neighborhood. I can't wait to suggest gentrification. On the way to the senior center for the meeting, Zeke's old graffiti pals wonder where he's been lately. Alex suggests they come along to help out, but they think it's stupid and want Zeke to come do more tagging with them. Zeke, however, has rejected the allure of painting on walls to painting on canvas. The three are not happy about this.
Zeke, you'll be sorry you snubbed us. Just wait and see.
Spoilers, he will not be. The beautifying campaign begins with the park and playground next door to the senior center, and yeah, they just paint everything white. Like, I'm not kidding. The playground equipment, the gazebo, the walls, just everything is pure white. Mind you, this could just be the result of lazy artwork, since it looks like the friggin' ground is painted white as well. But the impression it really does give, especially with colorful buildings in the background, is that they literally think everything being white looks better. But yeesh, it's actually kind of creepy seeing everything looking like a friggin' iPod. Or the bridge of the Kelvin Timeline Enterprise. Anyway, our graffiti gang shows up to laugh at their efforts, especially with their graffiti on a tall wall.
I bet you'd like to destroy that too, huh? Well, it's too bad that wall is too big to scrub clean.
Damn, he's right! It's a shame ladders haven't been invented yet! Mrs. Riley says that she actually thinks that while they can't scrub it off, they could paint over it and put a mural on it. Okay. 1, if it's too tall to wash, it's too tall to paint over. 2, if you're gonna get rid of the graffiti, why are you gonna put in more graffiti? Yeah, graffiti is just putting writing or drawing on a surface in public view without permission. Sure, you could argue that the mural is different because they do have the permission of the building owner. Presumably the person who owns the senior center would approve, although if it's the state, maybe not. But they keep saying that graffiti is ugly and have yet to clarify what that means beyond words and pictures on walls and stuff. What this implies is that their problem is purely based on content. That they think it's ugly because it doesn't fit their standards of beauty. And let's be real here, if this was a slur or a swastika or something, hell yeah, it's ugly and terrible and should be removed. But this is what they call so hideous that they can't stand it? A cartoony silhouette with some lightning bolts and TCB under it? Regardless of how you feel about graffiti as an art form, the comic is just declaring, I don't like this form of art, but this other form is better because I think it looks nicer. And you're allowed to not like it, but the comic is just declaring one form of art is inferior to pretty much the same kind just because of personal preference. A few days later, they indeed acquire the permission to paint the mural, but need to raise money to buy the art supplies necessary to do so. Mr. Dobbs suggests they put on a talent show at the senior center and charge for admission. What a wonderful suggestion! We have lots of talented youngsters and seniors who would be happy to perform. I can't wait to dust off the old burlesque act. And I'll use my Tandy camcorder to record the entire performance. We can make copies of the tape available to shut-ins. Just what every introvert wants. A video of old people and children putting on a talent show. The money just prints itself. And thus the night of the show, which we see has 3 children dancing on a tiny-ass stage. The show is great! The crowd loves it! And the center is packed with people, as opposed to all the cats that usually inhabit it. Also, great job talking over the footage. I'm sure those shut-ins you'll be selling the tapes to really wanted to hear your commentary, kids. They make the money they need. It's a dream come true. Thanks for letting us use your computer to work out the mural's composition, Alec. We're not going to show you how the Tandy computer helped with that. Just take our word for it. Our expensive computer was essential. Oh, get this. Apparently ladders haven't been invented yet. They're using friggin' scaffolding to paint over the graffiti. I'm glad Linda volunteered to help with the mural. She's almost as good an artist as Zeke is. And she's a hard worker, too. Linda was paid $3 million for her brief cameo in this comic. The mural is finished, and yeah, I can definitely tell this was about just deciding what art they think is nice art versus ugly art, since it's a landscape with deers and birds and flowers and yada yada. Don't get me wrong, it looks fine, would probably make for a legitimately nifty mural, but it's the douchey, smug attitude I take issue with. A few days later, Linda makes a reappearance in the comic. Thanks to her brother being friends with the brother of one of the graffiti gang, she's learned that the gangs plan to paint graffiti over it. You know, Linda was the original 3rd Tandy Computer Whiz Kid, but she had to drop out due to a contract dispute. They can't go to the police without evidence, so Zeke comes up with a plan. The next night, the 3 graffiti gang arrives with their spray paint ready, and Zeke confronts them. He says he won't stop them from doing the graffiti, but he is going to videotape them doing it with the Tandy camcorder. The 3 are shaken by this, Zeke calling them out on their hypocrisy, that if they're actually proud of their artwork, it won't matter that they get the credit for it. Listen, this is our neighborhood, Zeke, and graffiti helps make it ours. And yet this was the best you could come up with? Alex suggests that since it is their neighborhood, they should make it a beautiful neighborhood by painting murals instead of graffiti. Yes, only draw nature and happy things. That's the only kind of artistic expression that matter. Since they're going to be making a new mural in a few days, they invite the 3 to join them for that. And apparently that's all it takes to convince them. You made the right choice, Carlos. Now you'll get a chance to show off your artistic ability in a way you can really be proud of. I mean, they were pretty loudly proclaiming how proud they were of their tag beforehand and of how big it was, so... They bring them to Mrs. Riley, who's more than happy to start helping them with art stuff. Why don't we discuss the project over a snack? Now that I have help with my marketing, I have plenty of cookies. That's all she ever makes. She's actually planning on fattening the children up to eat them. And so our comic ends with the completion of the new mural, which is a portrait of the people who made the art walking hand in hand with the sun rising behind them. And yet I notice Alec and Shanna aren't on there. Oh my god! Have Alec and Shanna been ghosts this whole time? Is that why we had the time loop? This mural isn't only a masterpiece, it delivers an important message to everyone who sees it. You're right, Alec. I just hope everyone gets that message. People called Romanes, they go the house. This comic sucks, but it's still one of the better Tandy Computer Whiz Kids comics. I genuinely have no strong feelings about graffiti one way or another, but the comic's attitude towards it is up its own ass. Once again, I have to give it credit for not following the formula of so many of the other Tandy Computer Whiz Kids comics. Hell, there's no mention of drugs or anything else like that. It pretty much stays on message about community service, helping one another, especially for those less fortunate, and just in general a sense of togetherness. That part is good and it works. It's just the moralizing about one form of graffiti versus another is annoying as all hell. What's amusing to me, though, is that for the last time I talk about the Tandy Computer Whiz Kids, They're actually barely a part of the plot. The story really becomes Zeke's later on. Sure, they're around and get the ball rolling, but it's Zeke who came up with the plan to get his friends to change their ways. Alec and Shanna are just there to provide the camcorder. Friggin' Linda did more to drive the plot forward. While I have heard that Alec and Shanna do actually make some sporadic appearances in a few old Superman issues, I sadly couldn't find any evidence of that. The closest I got was discovering that The Computer Masters of Metropolis has been reprinted multiple times in various DC titles, including Action Comics, Legion of Superheroes, and House of Friggin' Mystery. I mean, I do consider the Tandy Computer Whiz Kids a horror story, but not quite so much that one. Ultimately, I don't quite know what we can really take away from the Tandy Computer Whiz Kids in the end. Question authority, perhaps? Computers won't solve all of life's problems? Don't have elementary or middle school students working a call center to talk about drug addiction? While I have joked about how I'm glad we won't see them again, I must admit, stuff like the Tandy Computer Whiz Kids always made me laugh. From its terrible dialogue, to its occasional copied and pasted artwork, to its literal copied and pasted writing, to its shoehorned-in drug PSAs, or its plot-driven recycling PSAs, it puts a smile on my face, and hopefully talking about them the last several years has put one on yours, too. Next time, we continue PSA stuff, but with straight-up superhero action as Captain America goes to war on drugs. This mural isn't only a masterpiece, it delivers an important message to everyone who sees it. You're right, Alec. I just hope everyone gets that message. The message is literally written underneath the artwork.